little frustrating about this topic is if we look at the Old and New Testament, when did it happen? Did it happen so far long ago that humans have no possible memory of it? Did it happen before the Garden of Eden? Did it happen after the Garden of Eden? It's very confusing in terms of the timeline. So I can't help you with that. I don't know either. So if any of you know for sure, let me know. But I do not know when the fall of Satan occurred.
So it is possible then that when we read the Adam and Eve account that the serpent in the garden, which we assume is Satan, could be Satan before the fall, and that could have been one of his activities that led to God going, all right, that's it, kid, out.
It's possible.
Giving him the big boot.
Yeah.
We looked at Isaiah 14, 12 to 20, and Ezekiel 28, 12 to 19. Almost all evangelicals and Catholics view that those passages are indeed about the fall of Satan. However, it never actually refers to Satan in either of the passages. And one of them, in old translations, refers to Lucifer. So people said, well, see, it's talking about Satan. The problem is that Lucifer was transliterated from the Latin Luciferos, which means son of the morning star. So Lucifer probably never was a name for Satan. Rather, it's a lazy translator's decision 450 years ago to, I won't bother looking up what this means. I'll just transliterate it into a proper name. So there is quite a bit of controversy about these two. But I personally believe they are about Satan, and we read them last week. I won't repeat them this week, but if you missed it, go ahead and read it. And what it tells us basically is that Satan was kind of like in a special place at the throne of God, but that Satan got such a big head and had such a big ego that he put himself on the same level as God or even higher than God. And that's what ultimately caused the fall. It doesn't so much describe the fall itself, it describes the conditions that led up to the fall. Let's see, I just did that, didn't I? And then Revelation 12 is particularly important because if we all know about the war in heaven between Satan and God, and this is the part of the Bible that actually describes it for us. So we haven't gotten to that part yet. Okay, let's see. So we'll start here. This is where we had left off last week. So now we're into the New Testament references to the fall, of which there are several. So the New Testament is hardly mute on the topic. This is almost kind of like a non sequitur. It's kind of Christ is sort of talking about something else, and then kind of out of the blue, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. But that's pretty definitive that Satan fell from heaven, that Satan was thrown out of heaven. Okay, I will pick up with 17, which is in black, but then 18 is in red. Which means nothing. Okay? The 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. And this, I remember, if you remember the Bible, first he sent the 12 out to preach the word, and then he sent the 72 out to preach the word.
Because the 12 weren't given a job.
He replied, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. And then he says, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. So it's in the context that the 72 are saying, wow, even the demons that are controlled by Satan submit to you. And his immediate response is, Satan. I saw him fall like lightning from heaven. So it's almost like Jesus is dismissing Satan and saying he's not here. But that is Christ. 2 Peter 2:4. This is always an interesting one. 2 Peter is an interesting book. Maybe Peter wrote it. Maybe it was written by one of his followers. But there's a lot of very strange stuff in 2 Peter. And we're not going to talk about all of it. But one of the strange things is this, 2 Peter 2:4. Maybe I'll start with 1. But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false prophets among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves. Many will follow their shameful ways and will bring the way of truth into disrepute. In their greed, these teachers will exploit you with stories they have made up. Their condemnation has long been hanging over them, and their destruction has not been sleeping. That almost sounds a little like predestination, but we won't go into that. Okay, now we get to the verse in question. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them into gloomy dungeons to be held for judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on the ungodly people, and then the sentence continues, and it's about 14 paragraphs long. But that's interesting stuff, isn't it? And there that it sounds like he's talking about something that's already happened, but it also could be interpreted as being prophetic, because Revelation tells us this is something that happens at the end times. But it's very specific. God did not spare angels when they sin. So if you're in a bar or at a party sometime and the question comes up, can angels sin? What's the answer?
Yes.
Absolutely. There are many references in the Bible to angels sinning. But sent them to hell, putting them into gloomy dungeons to be held for judgment. Well, we hear that's exactly what happened in the book of Revelation. Let's see, Jude 1:6. This isn't a place where you would expect to get a lot of heavy angelology, but Jude, probably written by the brother of Jesus, and also an interesting book in its own right. It only has 1 chapter. Quotes from 1 Enoch, quotes from the Assumption of Moses, neither of which you will note are official members of the Old or New Testament. And he has a strange reference. Let's see, we'll pick up with 4. For certain men whose condemnation was written about long ago have secretly slipped in among you. They are godless men who change the grace of our God into a license for immorality and deny Jesus Christ, our only sovereign and Lord. Though you already know all this, I want to remind you that the Lord delivered his people out of Egypt, but later destroyed those who did not believe. And then here's the reference. And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority, but abandoned their own home, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. Very similar to the reference that we just had in 2 Peter. And that one does sound more prophetic. That does use the tense where it's talking about the future, whereas the 2 Peter one's a little more ambiguous. And now we get into the major leagues. No more messing around. No more inference. No more interpretation. Now we get to the big leagues. The 12th chapter of Revelation. And one of the difficulties in the 12th chapter of Revelation is we do not know when it was, well, we know when it was written. We do not know what time frame it is talking about. Is it part of the end time sequence? Well, then that means it's describing events that haven't happened yet. But as we know, throughout Revelation, there are often chapters that go back and talk about earlier times. So this doesn't help us figure out when this occurred, but it does tell us that it occurred, and it's very specific about it. Okay. It's not that I've never read this to you before, but I always enjoy it. His tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. So when you hear people say that Satan took 1/3 of the angels to them, that is the reference they're referring to, which requires interpretation. There was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. So can angels sin?
Oh boy.
Oh yes. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down. And now, just to make sure you know who he's talking about, he says the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to earth, and his angels with him.